But yeah, so I saw your work and I was very happy, like what you were talking about and how you married like that picture and words. Like, I guess for you, when did that start?
It really, I've always been just fascinated by words, and really my first artwork as a child was lettering. I would decorate my school books and things like that with various pens and colored pencils and crayons and things like that. And I earned my living as a writer for a lot of years.
Oh, really? Did you do like nonfiction, fiction,
I did
communications?
Creative nonfiction. I did freelance writing on creative nonfiction. I also did. I started my career was in radio and television as a continuity writer, copywriter, and continuity writer, and I liked that. And then my partner at the time, who's now my wife,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. We had a business, a communications business, for 16 years, and we did all kinds of writing, from newsletters to ghostwriting books and medical writing and high-tech writing and all of that. And that's at the time that I really got into my art, because I just felt like my writing was getting hard. Production writing, having to produce writing for hire.
So you were on a time limit, I see.
And I felt like I lost control of my own heart and my own writing, and so I always said.
So when was this, like, per se, like
This was probably in the late 80s. And so
how long were you writing up to the late 80s? Was it like 10 years, 5 years?
Oh, 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
20 years.
20.
So wow, so yeah, you probably had burnout.
I've had a long career at it, and there were things that I wanted to write, and I never had time for it because I was so busy doing what everybody else wanted me to do.
So you did 20 years of writing, then 20 years of art, like actually visual art?
Well, I've been working in visual art since the late 80s, so that's 30 years. Yeah. So, and that has been primarily for me. Not that I haven't sold it, and I do a lot of showing, exhibiting, and for small groups, and doing and mixing it with performance, because that's what I really love. But I would never, and I probably shouldn't ever say never, but I wouldn't want to do a proposal and then have to get ready for a show. That would take the fun out of it for me. I'd much rather do the art that I want to do and then find a place that it fits.
Okay, so you don't, like, as far as like grant money, have you ever like got grants or commissions or done research? Because I know you work with the schools. Well,
I do a lot of
artistic research.
Yes, and all of my work, I feel like my art is my research. So I get interested in, well, let's just say I was interested in race way back. And so I began doing a lot of reading and writing and teaching about it. And I've been teaching at Mason since 2000.
And that's George Mason. So
George
for people
Mason,
who don't know,
George Mason University, yes. And I teach in the School of Integrative Studies, which used to be New Century College, but we're well into the new century. So, and I teach in the Social Justice and Human Rights concentration. So I use literature and film and art, contemporary art, to teach about these things.
So speaking of George Mason and tying it back to when you transitioned from writing to the visual arts, I'm curious, how do you see technology? How has it affected, even when you teach? How do you incorporate it?
Yeah.
Going from television and radio, and that was, that was the new thing, and that was amazing. And then even I remember our TV, it was a big deal that we got color TV.
Yes.
Because we used to have the black and white, and then my parents had the color one, and I had the. So I'm just saying, like, how has that like changed your art approach? Or is there...
I still very much prefer working with art with my hands, but there's no avoiding technology, and I love it. I've got every, the latest iPhone. I use an iPad. I write all the time with a computer. I have all kinds of apps, but I don't really use technology to make art. My wife does, and I appreciate it.
She does illustrations, or
no? She does photography and video, but she does things like what do you call those transfers? She does photography. That one up there is one that she did.
Mind if I show?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, this one.
And she then did a transfer of it onto wood.
Okay.
I enjoy it. I certainly use technology in the classroom all the time. When I first started, even in 2000, we were still using the transparencies or slides.
Yes,
I have to go and get slides of the art. Now everything is available on YouTube. And
so when you present the art in the class, did you had to get it on the...
I had to get slides, or I had to make my own transparencies in the beginning, or find somebody who had made a video. Now, almost everything that I do, I can access through technology, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and I think it, like I started finding out about some artists from Japan and Russia I never would have had access to had I not had technology and been able to look them up and, on the internet.
Yeah, it is. It's just fascinating, and the students are so adept at it too that I can send them off to find new artists, and we again I use contemporary art, so I'm using the really edgy stuff that is about some kind of issue that we're dealing with.
And when did you decide that, like, or when did you carve out your lane? Like, it seems like right now, when I got to see you at the library in Alexandria, it seemed like you have like a lane. It seems like, how did that lane, did you always have that lane per se? Like when your work seems very cohesive.
Well,
compared to some people are kind of scattered.
Thank you. Well, but if you look at it, it's all very different in a way.
Yeah, extremely different. I don't mean like it looks the same, but I'm saying like they seem to like...
Yeah, it's all about human rights, or even the ones that look like they are just pretty pictures are usually done with junk mail and stuff, so they deal with the environment. I grew up just worried about political issues and worrying about the racial issues in the South, and so it's been all of my life that I've wanted to figure all of this stuff out and find my place and how to be an ally. And then when I came out as gay, then I needed allies.
And when did you come out? Did you tell you was it in the 80s?
It was 1980, and that was a really hard time at the time.
Do you think the whole transitional, like from writing and coming out during that time period, that had an influence of coming to the art?
It probably
the visual
did.
side?
It probably did. I mean, there's a story connected with my art that I think is quite telling. I drew all the time as a child, and there was a woman who lived next door to us that I just thought was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen in my life. And I would wait for her to come home from work, and I would leave her pictures, and there would just be a profile with long brown hair, and I would say, "This is you. You are beautiful. I love you." And I would slip it under her door and wait for her to come home and wait for her to call me over and say, "Oh, this is so sweet. I love you, and I love you," and But then one time I heard my mother talking to her friends, and she laughed and said, "I think Suzanne has a crush on Virginia." And I was only 8 years old. I didn't even know what a crush meant. But I knew it wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of put away all of my art. And I thought I didn't have any talent. I liked art, but it was more.
Do you think that was self-imposed, or
I know it.
or culturally around you? That was.
It was. I think it was self-imposed, but I didn't have an awareness enough to know that was what did it. But then when Lynn and I got together, my wife and I got together in 1980, it just started bubbling up in me that I wanted some colored pencils, and so I immediately started taking classes in art, and so that's when it started.
Wow.
And I do believe, looking at it in retrospect, that I was shamed, and so I didn't want to reveal. I was shamed by loving somebody, and so I wanted to put it away, even though it wasn't a conscious thing at all.
Well, I can definitely relate to that. I know my first real art, my poem, came from actually liking someone and not knowing how to say it. And I remember writing it and giving and feeling so like stupid. God,
then you have a shame attack.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, is anybody in your family into the arts, or so a lot of your issues are, straightforward, and a lot of things that you paint. I wouldn't say they're dark in a sense, but I'm saying they're pretty much little to the imagination. They're putting some of the most, not the most talked about subjects right in your face.
Right.
And does any of your family, are they like that? Are they outspoken? Or like a lawyer as a mom? Or
no. My family was always very political, and the only things that I remember us really arguing about is politics at the table. There are a lot of artists in my family, and all of them are into pretty pictures, and always have been. So that piece of it doesn't exactly fit. I'm definitely different in my family, but they were all liberal, progressive people, but they're not as, they would call me radical and sort of in your face, even though, I'm not really. Yeah. There are a lot of people.
More extreme. There's people, with the election, I went out for inauguration and the ball and stuff like that, and I saw some pretty extreme things out there that were, I would call that radical, but I could see.
Well, I was at the Women's March, and I guess my philosophy is that you don't really win friends and influence people by being mean. And so I'm not really mean, but I have really strong opinions and views and ideas about what is right and what's wrong. And
since we're on that subject, one question I always like to ask other artists and people and professors is, what does love mean to you? Like, if you could.
Yeah, it's well, first of all, it's a verb. It is action. It's putting other people ahead of yourself, and if not ahead of yourself, at least learning to put yourself into other people's shoes and experiences. And my thought is really there are very few of us who will do that without being prodded. If you don't have any concept of what it's like to be in prison, you're not going to worry about all the black males who are incarcerated. It's just not your problem. So it's something that I go around saying we have to think about all of the people that we don't think about.
Wow. And then I wanted to also know, would you be willing to read one? You have anything you wanted to read? Or no? Or any? Because I heard some of your work; it was pretty good.
Well, and that is recorded. That whole thing I think is on my website. It has some.
Okay, so I'll direct people that way.
But I need. It's all for an audience. You know, it's not just. You know.
So you're more into the performance.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the feedback.
A feedback
and the feeling.
loop. Yes.
Yeah, the feeling. Yeah.
Well, and I wanted to be a movie star as a child.
Yeah.
You know, I love words, but I love to write, and I like to read my stuff and perform it, and I love to perform Lynn's work too. I feel like she's more of a poet than I am, but I do sort of lyrical prose, and
I think that's awesome. I'm a performer too, so I know how it feels like. I have people always ask me, "Well, sing." It's like, and people are like, "Well, you're not a singer." I say, "Well, it's
you gotta have. It's got to be the right environment.
Contact. You know, you're not like a robot. You can't just turn it on. Some people think artists are robots. So you just, well, you're a poet. Well, say a poem. You're an artist. You'll draw a picture of my face.
Right.
You know, like you're like, I don't know, but.
And did you came in the middle, I think, of my last poem, didn't you? The spoken word piece.
Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah, I like. I read through some of your work online too, so I was able to get an idea of what to anticipate, and the pamphlets that you gave me, which I thought were very unique. To have an art pamphlet, with words.
I did that primarily to have here, because a lot of people aren't going to go to my website and read the blogs, and people are drawn to the eye over there, and if they just look at it, they don't know what it's about. So I did those little pamphlets to make sense out of some of the stuff, especially the abstracts that are called The World Split Open. They wouldn't have any idea what any of that was about without some explanation.
Well, I think that answers a lot of the questions I had. Is there anything you would like to share? Or?
It's been fun to talk about my work, and
because I'm open. I'm open to talk. Like sometimes I have to stop myself because I could talk about art and I know in my group, my writing group that I have was more than just writing. We also have artists and poets and things like that. But I get there at 12, and then sometimes I only lead to 3 or 4, and because we're talking. You know what I mean? Like just.
I'm interested in how you. I stand in solidarity with people whose ancestors were enslaved under my ancestors in a southern state I'm trying not to hate. African children ripped from their mothers and fathers for a simple bill of sale and a check in the mail. Looking in, I feel history's reverberations, that old story. We were there and we are here again. The newly enslaved, barbed wire, the new shackles, life jacket mountain, the new Ellis Island. Flint, Michigan, the new sea to shining sea. Suspicion and surveillance, the invisible internment. Hands up, don't shoot, the new national anthem. Looking in, I hear Martin Luther King Jr., no one is free until we're all free. I hear Simone de Beauvoir, freedom that is only interested in denying freedom must itself be denied. I hear Saint Teresa of Calcutta, if we have no peace, it is that we've forgotten that we belong to each other. I hear Brian Stevenson, our survival is tied to the survival of everyone. Everyone. Looking in, I am ashamed. I am ashamed of my privilege. Shame is not an adequate response. Shame is privilege. It feeds no one. I stand with the victims of injustice. I stand ready. Looking in, I use my hands. I make art. I believe in my soul that art saves lives. Art tells stories that save lives. It saves lives. It saved my life. I use my voice. I use my eyes. I use my words. I use my indignation and my imagination. I use my big mouth, my symbols, my shaking fists and hands, my history, my complicity, my standing in solidarity. I stand ready, and I keep on painting, horse with violin in mouth. And that, folks, is one artist's response to racial injustice.